Let me tell you a story. After I slapped my husband's mistress, he broke my leg and threw me in the basement. So I called my brother, the head of the Romano crime family. Brother, I said, don't leave a single one of them alive. It was our 3rd wedding anniversary. I had planned everything perfectly, cutting short my trip to New York Fashion Week just to surprise Marcus, my husband. I wanted to see his face light up when I walked through the door early. I wanted to feel his arms around me. I wanted to believe that we still had something worth celebrating. But when I opened the door to our home in Greenwich, the sharp click of my designer heels echoed on the imported marble floor. And that's when I saw them, a woman's stockings, red lace lingerie, a trail of clothes leading up the staircase to our master bedroom. My heart stopped. My hands went cold, but I told myself, maybe I was overreacting. Maybe our housekeeper was just doing laundry. Maybe there was a logical explanation. And then I heard it. Moans. Laughter. The sound of 2 people who thought they were completely alone. Marcus, what if your wife comes back early? A woman's voice purred. A voice I recognized instantly. It was Natalie, my best friend from college. Don't worry, Marcus grunted, his voice thick with pleasure. She's in New York. She won't be back until tomorrow. And even if she does come back, so what? That broke designer. I'm the one who pays for everything anyway. Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. 3 years. 3 years I had stood by him. I helped him build his company from nothing. I designed his logo, his branding, his entire corporate identity for free. I worked late nights by his side, believing we were building something together. And this is what I was to him? A freeloader? I didn't think. I just moved. I kicked open the bedroom door. The sight in front of me burned into my brain. 2 tangled bodies, pale skin against our bed sheets. The bed I had picked out. The room I had decorated. The life I thought we shared. Isabella. Marcus scrambled off Natalie's body, his face pale with shock. Natalie screamed, pulling the sheets over herself, but there was a smirk on her face. A satisfied, cruel little smirk. Marcus, listen to me, he started. This is all a— Shut up, I said, and then I swung my hand as hard as I could. The slap connected with Natalie's face with a crack that echoed through the room. Her head snapped to the side. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. Her perfect nose was suddenly crooked. Isabella, are you crazy? Marcus leaped from the bed, and before I could process what was happening, his fist slammed into my stomach. The pain was instant, blinding. I doubled over, gasping for air. How could you? I choked out through tears. How could you do this to me? How could I? He snarled, grabbing me by the hair. You deserve this. Who the hell do you think you are? Marrying into my family was the greatest honor of your life, you pathetic designer. How dare you hit Natalie? Her father is the CEO of Sterling Industries. Even through the searing pain, I started to laugh. A bitter, broken laugh. So that's it, I said. You cheated because her family has more money than mine. Have you forgotten who stood by you when you had nothing? Shut your mouth, he roared. And then he shoved me. I lost my balance. The world tilted. I tumbled backward down the grand staircase, my body slamming against each step, and then my right leg hit the decorative corner post. The sound was horrifying, a wet, sickening crack that I felt more than heard. The pain was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. White-hot agony shot through my entire body. My vision went black at the edges. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. I could only lie there, trembling, staring up at the ceiling. Stop the drama and get up, Marcus sneered, walking down the stairs. And then he kicked my injured leg. I screamed. The sound that came out of me didn't even sound human. Marcus, I think her leg is broken, Natalie said from the top of the stairs, wrapped in a bedsheet, her face pale. What a nuisance, Marcus muttered. Then he grabbed me by the arms and started dragging me across the floor. Every movement was agony. My leg twisted at an unnatural angle. I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood, trying not to pass out. He dragged me down to the basement and threw me inside like I was garbage. Don't give her anything to eat, I heard him tell our housekeeper through the ringing in my ears. Let her reflect on what she did for the next 24 hours. The heavy steel door slammed shut. Darkness, complete, suffocating darkness. I huddled in the corner of that damp basement, my legs swollen beyond recognition, the pain making me lose all sense of time. And that's when I reached into my pocket and found my phone, miraculously unbroken. At the very bottom of my contacts was a number I hadn't touched in 15 years. A number saved under one word: brother. My hands shook as I pressed call. After 3 rings, a deep, authoritative voice answered. "Yeah, Leo," I whispered, my voice broken and raw. "It's me. It's Isabella." Silence. Then I heard a chair crash to the floor. "Isabella? Where are you? What happened?" "My husband. He broke my leg. He locked me in the basement." Each word felt like swallowing glass. "Leo, help me. Send me your address. I'll be there in 10 minutes. The line went dead, and suddenly I started laughing. Laughing until tears streamed down my face, because Marcus had no idea who he'd just crossed. My brother wasn't just any brother. Leo Blackwood was the head of the Blackwood Organization, a shadow empire that controlled everything from real estate to private security to, well, let's just say his reach extended into places most people couldn't even imagine, and I had just called in the only favor that mattered. In less than 10 minutes, I heard it. Footsteps, heavy, purposeful footsteps upstairs. The sound of a struggle, shouting, and then silence. The basement door was kicked open with a single violent blow. Blinding light flooded in, and I had to shield my eyes. "Miss Isabella," a deep voice said. "I'm Victor. Your brother sent me to get you." A massive man in a black tactical suit knelt beside me, his face hardening as he saw my twisted leg. "These bastards," he muttered under his breath. As Victor gently lifted me into his arms, I saw 2 of Marcus's security guards lying unconscious at the top of the stairs, their weapons scattered across the floor, and in the living room. Marcus and Natalie were on their knees, held down by men in black, their faces masks of pure terror. "Isabella, who are these people?" Marcus screamed, struggling against his captors. "What are you doing?" I leaned weakly against Victor's shoulder and gave Marcus a blood-stained smile. "Let me introduce you," I said softly. "This is my brother's right-hand man, and as for who my brother is, you'll find out soon enough." As Victor carried me toward the waiting convoy of black SUVs outside, I heard Natalie's hysterical shriek behind me. "That's impossible. Isabella's family is nobody's. She's just a designer." Inside the lead vehicle, a man with salt and pepper hair was waiting anxiously. When he saw my condition, his eyes turned ice cold. "Isabella," Leo said, his voice trembling with barely controlled rage. "I'm going to break both of his legs. And the Sterlings? I'll leave none of them standing." "Not yet," I whispered. "I want to do this myself. I want to watch them lose everything." Leo studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then we do this your way. But I'm not leaving your side." Victor drove us to Mount Sinai's VIP medical center, where Dr. Reeves, one of the top orthopedic surgeons in the country, was already waiting. The surgery took 4 hours. When I woke up, I was in a hospital suite that looked more like a 5-star hotel. My right leg was in a cast, elevated by a sling. Outside the window, the glittering city stretched to the horizon. Leo was sitting on the sofa by my bed, reading through a thick file. "Dad," I called out softly, using the name I'd called him since our parents died when I was 8, and he raised me himself. He immediately put the file down and came to my side. "How are you feeling?" "Like I want revenge," I said honestly. Leo smiled, a cold, dangerous smile that I remembered from my childhood. "Good, because I've already started gathering everything we need." He opened the file. Marcus Hayes, age 32, CEO of Hayes Developments, built his fortune on predatory real estate deals and loan sharking. Currently bidding on the new Hudson River project, a bid that's full of inflated numbers and embezzled funds. He flipped to another page. And here's the interesting part. Your husband embezzled $3 million of company money to gamble at casinos in Atlantic City. He still hasn't filled that hole. I took the file, my heart racing. This is enough to send him to prison. It's enough to destroy him, Leo corrected. But I want to hear what you want, Isabella. The Blackwood way? Marcus would be at the bottom of the Hudson by now. I closed my eyes, remembering the day I met Marcus 3 years ago. He had waited outside my design office for a month, begging me to work with him. He said my designs had soul. He said he'd never met a woman as special as me. All lies. I'm going to make him feel pain worse than death, I said, opening my eyes. I'm going to pretend to forgive him. I'll go back to that house, and I'm going to gather every piece of evidence I need to watch him lose everything. His company, his reputation, his freedom, everything. It's dangerous, Leo frowned. I know, but I need to do this with my own hands. After a long silence, Leo finally nodded. All right. But Victor stays by your side 24/7. He pressed a call button, and Victor entered the room. From this day forward, my life belongs to Miss Isabella, Victor said, kneeling on one knee and presenting me with a specially made satellite phone. My direct line and Mr. Blackwood's emergency numbers are saved here. If you're in any danger, press this red button. We'll be there in under 3 minutes. I took the phone. Its weight felt like the key to a new life. A few days later, a terrified-looking Marcus appeared at my hospital room door. His suit was wrinkled, dark circles hung under his eyes, and his hands shook as he held a pathetic bouquet of gas station flowers. Isabella, he stammered. I had no idea your brother was Leo Blackwood. I'm so sorry. I composed my face into a look of weary forgiveness, the performance of a lifetime. It's my fault too, Marcus. I shouldn't have hit Natalie. His eyes lit up with desperate hope. Does this mean you forgive me? I must have been out of my mind, I lied smoothly. It was all Natalie's fault. She seduced you. Let's just put this behind us. Thank you, he breathed, clutching my hand. Thank you, Isabella. I swear it will never happen again. Behind him, hidden in a vase of flowers, was a camera Victor had planted, recording everything. On the day of my discharge, Leo sent a motorcade of 10 black Mercedes to escort me back to the Hayes mansion. The spectacle was so dramatic it made the local news. Marcus stood at the front door, his face pale as Victor himself pushed my wheelchair inside. If even a single scratch appears on Miss Isabella, Victor whispered in Marcus's ear, just loud enough for me to hear, Mr. Blackwood said he wants to watch you get eaten alive by wild dogs. Marcus's legs trembled, visibly. Returning to that house felt disgusting. Every room held memories that now tasted like poison. The bedroom was especially repulsive. Marcus had changed the sheets, but I could still picture him and Natalie there. Isabella, you should rest, Marcus said nervously, pouring me a glass of water. I have an urgent meeting at the office. Okay, come home early, I said with a gentle smile. The moment he left, I poured the water into a potted plant. Victor stood guard outside while I opened my laptop and got to work. As Marcus's wife, I knew all his passwords. I logged into his cloud account and found exactly what I was looking for. Hotel booking records for the past 6 months, bank transfer histories, and several videos that made my stomach turn. You animal, I muttered, saving everything to an encrypted drive. Then a new message popped up on his screen, from Natalie. Marcus, thank God she believed you. I'll wait for you at our usual spot. I miss you like crazy, baby. I stared at the message, then laughed out loud. He couldn't even wait 3 days. Perfect. I picked up the satellite phone and called Leo. Dad, it's time to start quietly buying up shares of Hayes Developments. Make sure no one notices. Over the next 2 weeks, I played the role of the forgiving wife perfectly. I attended Marcus's business dinners. I smiled for photos. I straightened his tie and laughed at his jokes. And behind the scenes, I was building an empire of evidence, using Leo's connections. I acquired 3% of Hayes Development stock through offshore shell companies. I contacted 2 minority shareholders who were unhappy with Marcus's leadership. They were willing to sell. My phone vibrated with a message from Leo. Adrian Chen has arrived in New York. He will attend the anniversary party tonight as a guest. He has what you need. Adrian Chen, a financial prodigy from Wall Street, one of Leo's most trusted advisors. With his help, my plan would take flight. That evening was the Hayes Developments anniversary gala, celebrating both the company's founding and our wedding anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me. I wore a deep crimson dress that hugged my curves. My leg brace was hidden beneath the elegant fabric, replaced with a lighter model that barely showed. My mother's vintage ruby necklace glittered at my throat. When Marcus and I entered the Plaza Hotel ballroom arm in arm, Hundreds of eyes turned toward us. They were filled with curiosity, pity, and, most of all, the eager anticipation of watching a public spectacle. The scandal of the CEO's affair with his wife's best friend had spread like wildfire through New York's elite circles. "Isabella, you look stunning tonight," Marcus whispered, his breath hot on my neck. I suppressed my disgust and gave him a radiant smile. "It's an important night." "I can't have you losing face, can I?" Marcus visibly relaxed. My gentle behavior over the past 2 weeks, even convincing Leo to back off, had made him believe I'd forgotten everything. The fool. Marcus's parents approached, their faces plastered with awkward smiles. After learning about my connection to Leo Blackwood, the social climbing couple had completely changed their tune. "My dear, how is your leg?" Marcus's father, Richard Hayes, asked nervously. "Marcus can be so thoughtless. We're so grateful for your understanding." I smiled graciously and scanned the room. Then I spotted her. Natalie stood by the champagne tower in a white lace dress that made her look like a cheap wedding cake. When our eyes met, her face filled with resentment. "I need to say hello to an old friend," I said, releasing Marcus's arm and walking toward Natalie with elegant, measured steps. Natalie's face went pale. She instinctively stepped back. "Natalie," I said, my voice just loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "It's been a while. White suits you. You look just like the ghost you played in our college production of Hamlet." A few stifled laughs erupted around us. Natalie's face flushed red. "Isabella, don't be so smug. Marcus is only with you because he's afraid of your brother." I leaned in close and whispered in her ear, "There's going to be a fun little show later. Make sure you keep your composure." Before she could respond, I turned gracefully and came face to face with Adrian Chen. He was impeccably dressed in a navy suit, his sharp eyes hidden behind gold-rimmed glasses. "Miss Blackwood," he said, lightly kissing the back of my hand, "your brother speaks very highly of you." "Mr. Chen," I smiled, "I was hoping we could speak after the party." "It would be my honor." As the party reached its peak, Richard Hayes took the stage to boast about Hayes Development's glorious achievements, conveniently omitting any mention of embezzlement or failing projects. I sat at the head table, playing the part of the perfect wife, occasionally straightening Marcus's tie and smiling warmly. "And finally," Richard announced, "I want to thank my daughter-in-law Isabella for her understanding and grace. Everyone makes mistakes when they're young. What's important is that family remains strong. Now let's all raise a glass to this lovely couple." Everyone raised their glasses. I lowered my head to hide the contempt in my eyes, then looked up with a warm smile. Marcus, seemingly moved, took my hand. "Isabella, I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." "You won't need a lifetime," I said softly. "You can start right now." Leaving him with a puzzled expression, I stood and walked gracefully toward the stage, taking the microphone from the MC. "Thank you all for attending our anniversary celebration," I said, my voice clear and steady. "As the wife in this family, I've prepared a special gift." I gestured toward the lighting booth. The ballroom lights dimmed. A massive projection screen slowly descended from the ceiling. Marcus's face tensed. "No. Isabella, please don't—" He tried to rush the stage, but Victor appeared behind him like a shadow, his hand clamping down on Marcus's shoulder. "Enjoy the show, darling," I said, pressing a button on the remote. The screen lit up, and hell broke loose. The first image that appeared on the screen was crystal clear, high definition. Impossible to deny. Marcus and Natalie tangled together in my marital bed. The audio was even worse. Their voices, their laughter, their complete disregard for my existence. A date stamp in the corner showed it was filmed while I was still in the hospital. With my broken leg, they couldn't even wait 3 days. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Natalie screamed and tried to run for the exit, but security blocked her path. Marcus's mother fainted on the spot. His father's face turned the color of ash, but I wasn't done. "That's just the beginning," I announced calmly. Switching to the next slide, bank statements appeared on the screen, clear evidence of Marcus's $3 million embezzlement. Casino surveillance footage showed him gambling away company funds in Atlantic City. Then came the construction documents, proof that the East River project had stalled because Marcus had diverted funds, leaving hundreds of displaced families homeless. And finally, I played an audio recording, Marcus's voice, cold and calculating. I don't care if one or two of them die during the demolition. The important thing is that the site is cleared by tomorrow. The ballroom fell dead silent. Every eye was on me as I descended from the stage, my heels clicking against the marble floor. I walked slowly, deliberately toward Marcus, who had collapsed to his knees. "For 3 years," I said, my voice quiet but sharp as a blade, "I secured 7 major projects for you. My designs won industry awards. My work raised your company's stock price by 30%. And what did you give me in return? Betrayal, violence, humiliation." "Isabella, I'm sorry," Marcus sobbed. "I was wrong. I was so wrong. But I forgive you," I said suddenly, raising my voice. The room buzzed with confusion. Richard Hayes scrambled onto the stage and snatched the microphone. "It's all a misunderstanding. As you can see, my daughter-in-law has forgiven my son. Now everyone, please enjoy the party." I descended from the stage gracefully, walking through a sea of shocked stares toward Adrian Chen, who was waiting in the corner with 2 glasses of champagne. He handed me one, his eyes gleaming with admiration behind his glasses. "Magnificent performance." "It's just the beginning," I said, taking a sip. "Did you bring the files?" Adrian produced a folder from his briefcase. The complete shareholding structure of Hayes Developments, plus their real financial statements from the past 3 years. "Much more interesting than what's been made public." I opened the folder. My eyes widened. The company's actual debt was 3 times the reported amount. Massive sums had vanished through a network of shell corporations. "This is more than enough for a hostile takeover," I murmured. "More than enough," Adrian smiled. "I've already contacted 3 investment firms that specialize in aggressive acquisitions. They're just waiting for your signal." The party continued in a bizarre, tense atmosphere. Marcus followed me around like a kicked dog, endlessly begging for forgiveness. I maintained my gracious smile the entire time, looking every bit the forgiving wife. Richard pulled me aside, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Isabella, about the board of directors? Don't worry, Father," I said sweetly. "I've already told Leo to halt his acquisition of company stock. We're family, after all." He let out a long sigh of relief. He had no idea I already controlled 5% through offshore accounts. With the 8% I was about to acquire from minority shareholders, I would be the 4th largest shareholder in his own company. After the party, Adrian drove me back to the Greenwich mansion. Victor sat in the passenger seat, ever vigilant. "Hayes Development stock will crash next week," Adrian analyzed. "The scandal you exposed tonight, combined with coordinated selling pressure, will trigger a free fall. 3 consecutive limit-down days at minimum." "Good," I said, watching the city lights blur past. "When it hits rock bottom, we buy everything." When the car stopped in front of the mansion, Adrian suddenly asked, "Did you really forgive him?" I smiled and pointed to my leg, still in its brace. "Mr. Chen, do you believe in loving your enemy?" "No." "Funny," I said. "Neither do I." Inside the mansion, Marcus was on his knees in the living room, crying like a child. I looked down at him and found the situation endlessly amusing. This was the man I once loved, now reduced to a sniveling, pathetic coward. "Isabella, I was wrong," he sobbed, grabbing at my dress. "I'll do anything. Please forgive me." I stroked his hair gently, as if petting a dog. "Marcus, I want to see that you're sincere. I hear Natalie's father is also bidding on the Northside Development project." Marcus's eyes lit up with understanding. "I'll cut all ties with the Sterlings tomorrow. I promise." "Good boy," I said, patting his cheek. "Now go to bed. You have work tomorrow." After Marcus scurried upstairs, thanking me profusely, I went into his study and locked the door. I called Leo. "Dad, it's time for the next phase. I need the evidence on the Sterling family's offshore tax evasion." 3 days after the gala disaster, I sat in the dining room elegantly eating blueberry pancakes, my leg brace replaced with a much lighter model. Marcus came downstairs. his tie askew, dark circles under his eyes. "Coffee?" I offered, pushing a latte toward him. He eyed the cup with suspicion. "No thanks. I have an urgent meeting." I shrugged and took a sip myself. Marcus's paranoia was amusing. In public he was submissive, but when we were alone, he wouldn't even touch food I'd handled. "Oh, by the way," I called out as he headed for the door, "there's a charity auction tonight at the Metropolitan Club. I donated that Patek Philippe watch of yours. You know, your grandfather's. You don't mind, right?" Marcus's face went rigid. "That watch is a family heirloom." "I know," I said with a sweet smile. "Which means it'll sell for a much higher price. It's already been announced to the press. Young CEO of Hayes Developments donates family heirloom to help underprivileged children. Great PR, don't you think?" He clenched and unclenched his fists, then forced a smile. "Of course. I don't mind." As he fled, I checked the security camera feed on my phone. The moment Marcus got into his car, he was frantically making a call. 10-1, he was complaining to Natalie. My phone vibrated. A message from Adrian. "Short sellers are ready. Hayes Development stock hit limit down at market open. Board has requested trading halt." But it's too late. I smiled, took another sip of coffee, and opened my laptop to watch the financial news. The headlines were brutal. Hayes Developments in freefall. CEO Marcus Hayes under investigation. Stock crashes 45% in single day perfect. Victor appeared at the dining room door. "Miss Isabella, the car is ready?" "I have a doctor's appointment first," I said. "Then we're visiting that private investigator Leo recommended." At the hospital, I ran into someone unexpected. Natalie. She was wearing sunglasses and a mask, trying to be inconspicuous as she exited the obstetrics and gynecology clinic. I quickly ducked around a corner and discreetly photographed her medical receipt. Positive pregnancy test. I zoomed in on the photo, studying the details, and couldn't help but smile. So Natalie was pregnant. This changed everything. After my checkup confirmed my leg was healing well, Victor drove me to a rundown office building on the outskirts of the city. The elevator took us to the top floor, where the doors opened to reveal an office crammed with monitors, computer equipment, and surveillance gear. A thin man in a hoodie sat at a desk, his eyes never leaving the 6 screens in front of him. "Miss Isabella," he said without turning around. "They call me Cypher. I've got everything Mr. Blackwood asked me to find." Cypher played several surveillance videos. They showed Marcus and Natalie meeting at a seedy motel yesterday afternoon, despite Marcus's promises to cut all contact. And here's something more interesting. Cypher switched screens. Now it showed Robert Sterling, Natalie's father and CEO of Sterling Industries, meeting secretly with Richard Hayes at an exclusive cigar lounge. They meet here regularly. 15th of every month. Have been for at least 5 years. My eyes narrowed. Can you record their conversation? That's difficult, Cypher scratched his head. That place has military-grade security. I reached into my purse and pulled out a fountain pen, a gift from Leo. Use this. Next time they meet, bribe a waiter to plant it on Robert Sterling. Cypher's eyes lit up as he examined the pen. State-of-the-art listening device. Damn, your brother has the good toys. As we left, I called Leo. Dad, Natalie's pregnant. I'll take care of her, Leo said immediately. No, don't touch her yet. That baby might be useful. There was a pause. Isabella, what are you planning? Trust me. Oh, and Robert Sterling and Richard Hayes have been meeting regularly. Something's not right. Another pause. Sophia, the relationship between the Sterlings and the Hayes families might be more complicated than you think. It goes back 15 years. 15 years? What happened 15 years ago? I'll find out and let you know. Tonight at the auction, be careful around Natalie. That evening, I changed into a Chanel dress and asked my makeup artist for a fragile beauty look, elegant but vulnerable. Leo sent over a jewelry box. Inside was a diamond necklace with a rare black pearl at its center. I recognized it immediately from photographs. It had belonged to my mother. When we arrived at the Metropolitan Club, I told Victor to wait in the car. I can handle tonight on my own. The charity auction was always a major event for New York's elite. The moment I entered, The noisy hall fell silent. Then whispers erupted from every corner. That's the Hayes daughter-in-law. I heard her brother runs half the East Coast. That Marcus Hayes must be an idiot, throwing her over for someone like Natalie Sterling. I walked to my reserved seat at the front, pretending not to hear. As soon as I sat down, a heavy perfume assaulted my nostrils. Isabella. Long time no see. Natalie had appeared beside me, wearing a flowing white dress that deliberately emphasized her slightly rounded belly. I heard you're still having trouble with your leg, she said with fake concern. Such a shame, I smiled and glanced at her stomach. You must be about 3 months along. First trimester. You should be careful. Natalie's face tightened. She clearly hadn't expected me to know. Marcus is so excited about this baby, she said, lowering her voice. He's going to divorce you as soon as it's born. Is that so? I took a tablet from my clutch and played a video. Then what do you make of this? The video showed Marcus from yesterday afternoon, running his hands through his hair in frustration. Why now of all times? His voice came through clearly. My father is forbidding me from seeing you. The company's stock is crashing. If that crazy wife of mine finds out I'm still talking to you, I'm finished. And honestly, a baby, right now? This couldn't be worse timing. Natalie's face went ashen. You didn't even bother closing the curtains in room 308, I sighed. If you're going to cheat, at least cover the basics. The other guests couldn't hear our conversation, but Natalie's near-fainting state was drawing plenty of attention. I stood and deliberately raised my voice. Natalie, you look so pale. Should I call a doctor? Especially with the baby on the way. What? Someone gasped nearby. Natalie Sterling is pregnant? It must be Marcus Hayes' baby. How shameless can you be? The murmurs grew into a wave of gossip that swept through the room. Flustered, Natalie tripped on the hem of her dress and fell spectacularly in front of everyone. As she scrambled to her feet, a dark red stain was spreading across her white dress. Ah, my baby, she shrieked hysterically. I watched the scene with cold eyes, then calmly dialed 911. Tonight's performance was turning out to be far more entertaining than I'd planned. Before the ambulance arrived, I even made a show of calling Marcus. His first reaction upon hearing his mistress had miscarried? Damn it, now my father's going to kill me! Hearing that, Natalie fainted again. I never made it to the actual auction that night. When I returned to the mansion, Marcus was in his study, smashing everything in sight like a man possessed. The moment he saw me, he lunged, his eyes bloodshot. What did you do to her? Me? I blinked innocently. Everyone saw it. She tripped and fell all by herself. You were spying on me, he snarled. Those videos, that's not important, I interrupted, sitting down gracefully. What's important is that I've decided to help you two get together. Let's get a divorce. Marcus froze as if struck by lightning. What? I'm tired, I said simply. Tired of this sham of a marriage. So here's my offer. For old time's sake, I'll only take what I'm owed. I spread out the papers I'd prepared. This house stays with me, and I want 5% of your company shares. Are you insane? Marcus shot up. This house is worth $10 million. And forget about the shares? I sighed and pulled out a stack of photos from my bag. Photos of Marcus with at least 3 other women besides Natalie. Photos of him gambling with known criminals. Photos of him taking bribes from contractors. Then I guess these go to every news outlet tomorrow morning, I said calmly. Marcus's face turned gray. You have 3 days to think it over, I said, collecting the photos. Oh, and by the way, Natalie lost the baby. But I'm sure your father is relieved. He hates the Sterlings, doesn't he? Marcus's head snapped up. How do you know my father hates the Sterlings? Lucky guess, I smiled. Why else would he forbid you from seeing her? After Marcus stormed out, I immediately call retry continued cipher. I need you to dig into the relationship between Richard Hayes and Robert Sterling. Focus on 15 years ago. There's something they're hiding. On it, Cipher replied. Give me 48 hours. I hung up and checked my computer for the day's progress. According to the medical records Cipher had obtained, Natalie's miscarriage had caused permanent damage. Future pregnancies would be nearly impossible, an unexpected bonus. My phone vibrated. It was an audio recording from Leo. I put in my earbuds and pressed play. Robert Sterling's furious voice filled my ears. "Richard, have you forgotten what happened 15 years ago? If I hadn't taken care of that body for you—" The recording cut off abruptly, but it was enough to send ice through my veins. Body. 15 years ago. A text from Leo arrived immediately after. "Isabella, come see me tomorrow. There are things I need to tell you." I stared at the phone screen, my heart pounding. What happened 15 years ago? Whose body? And why did I have this terrible feeling it was connected to my mother? Leo's estate was hidden deep in the hills outside the city, a fortress of stone and steel surrounded by towering pine trees and guarded by armed men. During the entire drive with Victor, I couldn't stop thinking about that recording. Took care of that body. The words echoed in my mind like a death knell. "We're here, Miss Isabella," Victor said softly. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. Leo was in the garden, practicing Tai Chi. Each movement was precise and powerful, belying his age. When he saw me, he stopped and gestured for me to follow him inside. His study smelled of cigars and old leather, a comforting scent from my childhood. "Is your leg better?" he asked, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey. "I can walk without the cane now." He nodded and retrieved a yellowed envelope from his safe. His expression was heavy, burdened. 15 years ago, Leo began slowly, when our parents died in that car accident. You were only 10 years old. I was 25. I raised you, protected you, kept you away from the darker parts of my business. "I know," I said. "You gave me everything. But there's something I never told you." He pushed a faded photograph across the desk. "Look at this man." The photo showed a younger Richard Hayes standing with a stranger in front of a construction site. They were holding champagne glasses, celebrating. A banner in the background read, "Grand Opening, Hayes and Sterling Joint Development." The stranger had his arm around Richard's shoulder, smiling broadly. "Who is this?" I frowned. "Christopher Sterling. Robert Sterling's younger brother." Leo's voice turned to ice. "And the man who murdered your mother." The glass in my hand slipped. It would have shattered on the floor if Leo hadn't caught it. "What?" I whispered. 15 years ago, Leo continued, his jaw tight. Richard Hayes and the Sterling family were running an illegal redevelopment project together. They were forcibly evicting residents, using intimidation and violence. Someone died in the process. Christopher Sterling beat a protester to death with a steel pipe. He produced another document with several blurry photographs clipped to it. In the photos, Christopher Sterling was holding a bloodied pipe, standing over a man's body. The date stamp was 1 week before my mother's death. "Your mother was driving past the construction site that day," Leo said, his voice trembling slightly. "She saw what happened. She took these photos and was going to go to the police." I stared at the images, my vision blurring with tears. "Christopher found out," Leo continued. "He went after her. By the time I got there," his voice broke. "By the time I got there, it was too late." The truth I'd been told, that my mother died in an accidental fall, was a lie, a brutal, calculated lie. "The police closed the case quickly," Leo said, his hands clenching into fists. "Richard Hayes and Robert Sterling pulled strings, bribed officials, buried the evidence. They told everyone it was an accident. What about Christopher Sterling?" My voice was barely a whisper. "Dead." Leo's smile was cold and devoid of humor. "Died in a car accident 3 days after your mother's funeral." I looked up sharply. The expression on Leo's face told me everything. It was no accident. "Richard Hayes and Robert Sterling covered everything up," Leo said, gathering the documents. "I've been collecting evidence for years, but their roots in politics and business run too deep. Until you married Marcus Hayes, I couldn't get close enough to bring them down." "You've been waiting," I said slowly, "waiting for me to find out the truth." "I didn't want you blinded by revenge," Leo sighed. "But now you have your own reasons to destroy them. And together we have the power to do it." I stood and walked to the window. The pine forest swayed in the wind, whispering secrets. My gentle mother, who taught me to sketch, who sang lullabies, who believed in justice, had been murdered for trying to do the right thing. "Dad," I said. Turning back to him, my voice strangely calm. "They have to pay, not just Marcus. The entire Hayes and Sterling families. A look of grim satisfaction crossed Leo's eyes. Do you have a plan? First, we make them turn on each other. I opened my phone to show him a report Adrian had just sent. The defective steel rebar used in Hayes Development's East River project was supplied by a shell company controlled by Robert Sterling. Leo's eyes gleamed. You're going to drive a wedge between them. The media is already prepped, I said, glancing at my watch. In 1 hour, news about the East River project's structural failures will be front-page financial news. And I've tipped off federal investigators about Robert Sterling's offshore tax havens. They're moving tonight. Leo poured us both another drink. Our glasses clinked. Your mother would be proud, he said softly. As I was leaving the estate, Victor handed me another file. Miss Isabella. Cipher found these internal documents from Hayes Developments. I skimmed through the confidential files, and a cold smile spread across my face. Marcus's embezzlement was far worse than I'd thought. He hadn't just lost money gambling, he'd been systematically mortgaging the company's core assets to cover his losses. Victor, change of plans. Take me to Hayes Development's headquarters. It's time to pay my husband a visit. In the top-floor boardroom of Hayes Developments, an emergency board meeting was underway. Through a secretary loyal to Leo, I was getting a live audio feed of the meeting on my phone. The East River collapse is being blown out of proportion by the media. I could hear Marcus's frantic voice. The most urgent thing is stabilizing the stock price. Mr. Hayes, came an older man's voice. Mr. Patterson, a veteran board member. The problem isn't just the media. The safety inspection report came back. All the steel materials failed quality standards. And the supplier is an affiliate of Sterling Industries. How do you explain that? I had no knowledge of this, Marcus stammered. That was the procurement department's decision. And your cousin runs procurement, doesn't he? Mr. Patterson said coldly. The board is demanding a full forensic audit, including the whereabouts of that $3 million. I heard glass shattering, followed by Marcus's furious shout. I took out my earpiece and rode the elevator to the top floor. When I opened the boardroom door, every director turned to stare. Marcus stood at the head of the table, his face ashen, his tie crooked. He looked like a cornered animal. I apologize for the interruption, I said with a gracious smile, walking toward an empty seat, the seat Leo's shell company shares had secured for me. As a major shareholder, I'd like to hear how you plan to handle the East River crisis. Marcus's eyes nearly popped out of his skull. How did you— Mrs. Hayes, you may not be aware, Mr. Patterson said, standing to greet me, but our investigation suggests this crisis was caused by deliberately substandard materials. And the supplier has deep ties to Sterling Industries. Oh, what a coincidence, I said, feigning surprise. My brother just informed me that federal investigators are raiding a Sterling Industries warehouse tonight. Something about offshore tax evasion and fraudulent accounting. The boardroom descended into chaos. Directors whispered frantically, some already pulling out their phones. Marcus's face had gone from ashen to gray. Gentlemen, I raised my voice. I propose we form an independent investigation committee to examine all transactions between our company and Sterling Industries. Furthermore, given Mr. Hayes' recent instability, I move that his duties as CEO be temporarily suspended. You crazy? Marcus lunged at me, but was immediately restrained by security. Calm down, darling, I said softly. This is for your own good. Just imagine if those casino loan documents and the illegal asset mortgage papers were to become public. Marcus froze, finally realizing the full extent of the cards I held. The board passed my motions with an overwhelming majority. As I left the building, the evening sky was stained blood red, like a prophecy of what was to come. My phone vibrated. A message from Adrian. Short sale operation successful. Hayes Development stock down 68% over 3 days. We've acquired 14% of outstanding shares at rock bottom prices. A moment later, a text from Leo. Federal raid successful. Robert Sterling in custody. Sterling Industries stock frozen. I let out a long breath and got into the waiting car. Back to the safe house, Miss Isabella? Victor asked. No. That place— I stopped mid-sentence as a black SUV in the rearview mirror caught my eye. It had been following us since we left the building. Victor, We have a tail, Victor's eyes sharpened. He pressed his earpiece. Team 2, black Range Rover at 2 o'clock, license plate New York, Charlie Tango 8214. Run it. Less than a minute later. Plate is fake. Facial recognition identifies the driver as head of security for Hayes Developments. Marcus's men, I murmured. When a cornered dog has nothing left to lose, it bites. Lose them and take me to the safe house. Victor wrenched the wheel. Our car swerved into a narrow alley. The SUV followed, accelerating. What followed was a high-speed chase through downtown Manhattan, weaving through traffic. Running red lights, our pursuers staying close. Hold on. Miss Isabella, Victor said, pressing a red button on the console. Thick smoke erupted from the back of our car, obscuring the SUV's vision. While they were blinded, Victor executed a series of sharp turns and drove into an underground parking garage, where we quickly switched to a pre-positioned vehicle. We exited smoothly while the SUV was still circling the garage entrance. Confused. Ethan is getting desperate, Victor said grimly. Should I have Mr. Blackwood send a team to handle him permanently? No, I said coldly. Let him try. It's time to show Marcus that I'm not someone he can intimidate. The safe house was a discreet penthouse Leo kept in Tribeca, equipped with state-of-the-art security. The first thing I did was check the latest news. The financial channels were ablaze. Sterling Industries CEO arrested. Hayes Developments facing bankruptcy. Massive construction fraud uncovered. The hashtag #ShockHayesCoverUp was trending nationally. Even more satisfying were the rumors spreading online. Whispers that Robert Sterling was involved in not just tax fraud, but money laundering and illegal campaign contributions. Sterling Industries' website had crashed. Their stock was in freefall. My phone rang. Marcus. I let it ring 10 times before answering. Isabella. This was all you, wasn't it? His voice was broken, slurred. Background noise suggested he was in a bar. I don't know what you're talking about, darling. Don't play dumb, he screamed. The board meeting, the stock crash, the Sterlings, this is all you're doing. What the hell do you want? I want you to know what it feels like to lose everything, I said, my voice light as a feather. Just like you made me feel. Silence. Then the sound of glass shattering. You just wait, Marcus roared. I'm going to make you suffer a fate worse than death. The line went dead. I shook my head and called Adrian. Keep buying Hayes Development stock and start a rumor that Robert Sterling is going to liquidate all his assets to pay fines. That should drive the price even lower. Already on it, Adrian said with a laugh. And we've discovered something interesting. A secret Swiss account belonging to Richard Hayes. Regular deposits every month for the past 5 years. The recipient? Natalie Sterling. This information made me pause. Marcus's father had been sending Natalie money every month for 5 years. Why? Check the memo lines on those transfers, I said, and prepare for the next phase. We're going to give Richard Hayes a birthday present he'll never forget. The night before Richard Hayes' 65th birthday party, I stood in my dressing room, trying on a champagne-colored gown that perfectly highlighted the ruby necklace my mother once wore. The scar on my right leg was now barely visible, just a thin line, a permanent reminder of where this all began. Victor knocked and entered, holding a velvet box. From Mr. Blackwood. He said it would complement your dress tomorrow. Inside was a diamond bracelet with a blood-red ruby at its center. Tell him thank you, I said. And ask him to meet me in 1 hour. Mr. Chen should be there too. In Leo's study, blueprints were spread across the mahogany desk. These are the actual construction plans for the East River project, Leo explained. What they submitted to the city versus what they actually built. I studied the documents carefully. The approved plans showed luxury condos with ample green space. The actual construction was a densely packed maze of tiny apartments with the floor area ratio exceeding regulations by 40%. So Richard was deceiving the City Planning Commission. I said. Adrian pointed to a seal in the corner. This is the final version, and construction is already 60% complete. If this gets out, the city will issue a demolition order. Hayes Development stands to lose at least $2.5 billion. Leo handed me a USB drive. Your birthday gift for tomorrow night is ready. But there's something even more interesting. He opened a laptop and pulled up bank statements. Richard Hayes' Swiss account. Over the past 3 years, he'd been transferring $120,000 monthly to Natalie Sterling. The memo line always read discretion, except for the most recent transfer, which was labeled medical expenses. The date was 2 days after Natalie's miscarriage. Richard knew Natalie was pregnant, I said slowly. Adrian opened another file. That's not all. According to medical records and Marcus's travel schedule, he was on a business trip to Hong Kong during the conception window. The timeline doesn't match. My eyes widened. Then the baby wasn't. What's more interesting, Adrian adjusted his glasses, is that Richard knew all of this. And he still helped Natalie hide the truth. He was even planning to pass the child off as Marcus's heir. Leo's expression was grim. The relationship between Richard and Natalie might not be what anyone thinks. The information made my stomach turn. The press will all be at the party tomorrow, I said, closing the laptop. It's time to give the Hayes family a gift they'll never forget. The next evening, the Hayes mansion was transformed into something from a fairy tale or a nightmare, depending on your perspective. Crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures, a string quartet, and a guest list that read like a who's who of New York's elite. I arrived on Marcus's arm, playing the role of the dutiful wife one last time. Marcus had become noticeably subdued since his suspension, like a dog that had been beaten too many times. My dear Isabella. Richard greeted me with a broad smile that didn't reach his eyes. Thank you for coming. His gaze lingered on the ruby necklace at my throat, and I saw something flicker in his expression. Recognition, perhaps even fear. It was my mother's, I said with a sweet smile. I'm sure you remember her, father. Richard forced a composed expression and quickly led us to the head table, where city officials, bank executives, and business leaders were seated. I noticed Natalie sitting in a corner wearing a simple black dress. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow. The miscarriage had clearly taken its toll. When she felt my gaze, she quickly looked away. The party reached its peak. Richard took the stage, boasting about Hayes Development's legacy, carefully omitting any mention of recent scandals. Applause erupted as if the stock market crash and federal investigations had never happened. And finally, Richard raised his glass. I want to thank my daughter-in-law Isabella for her grace and forgiveness during these difficult times. More applause. I stood gracefully and walked toward the stage. Under the table, Marcus desperately tugged at my dress, but I easily sidestepped him. You're too kind, father, I said, taking the microphone. As the daughter-in-law of this family, I've prepared a special birthday present for you. I gave Adrian a subtle nod. He operated his laptop, and the massive screen in the ballroom descended from the ceiling. Richard's face went rigid. Isabella, what are you? First, I pressed the remote. Let's take a look at the actual blueprints for the East River project versus what was submitted to the city. The images appeared side by side on the screen. Gasps filled the room. Several city officials went pale. Mr. Hayes, the director of city planning, leaped to his feet. What is the meaning of this? It's a misunderstanding. Richard rushed toward the stage. All a misunderstanding. But I quickly moved to the next slide. Next, we have the transaction history from Mr. Richard Hayes' Swiss bank account. For the past 3 years, he's been transferring over $100,000 monthly to Miss Natalie Sterling. The ballroom fell dead silent. Clear bank statements filled the screen. Dates, amounts, memo lines, all undeniable. Natalie screamed and tried to run, but security blocked the exits. And finally, my voice turned sharp. Miss Natalie Sterling's pregnancy diagnosis and medical records. A medical report appeared on screen. If you calculate the date of conception, I continued calmly. My husband was on a business trip in Hong Kong. That's quite a distance for conception to occur. That's a lie. Marcus shot up from his seat, his face twisted with fury. I also have DNA test results, I said, displaying another document. The preliminary paternity test, conducted before the miscarriage, proves the child was not Marcus's. The ballroom exploded. Then whose child was it? Someone shouted. I let the question hang in the air for a long, agonizing moment. Then I played an audio recording. Richard Hayes' voice, unmistakable. "Natalie, you keep the baby. We'll make Marcus accept it as his own. The Hayes family needs this child to secure the Sterling inheritance before Robert goes to prison." The revelation hit like a bomb. Marcus, looking like a man possessed, rushed toward his father and punched him square in the jaw. The situation devolved into complete chaos. Board members fled. Bankers tore up loan agreements. Reporters snapped photos frantically, their camera flashes creating a strobe light effect. I descended from the stage gracefully, walking through a sea of shocked faces toward the exit. Behind me, I could hear Marcus's roars, Richard's sobs, and Natalie's hysterical screaming, but I didn't look back. As I reached the car, Victor opened the door. "Where to, Miss Isabella?" "To the hospital," I said quietly. "I want to see something confirmed." We were halfway there when Victor suddenly swerved. "We're being followed." Multiple vehicles. 3 black SUVs were closing in fast. "Marcus must have sent everyone he has left," I said calmly. "Proceed with evasion protocol." But before Victor could accelerate, the lead SUV rammed us from behind. The impact threw me forward. My seatbelt locked, but I hit my head on the seat in front of me. Stars exploded across my vision. Through the rear window, I saw the SUV's doors opening, men in tactical gear pouring out, weapons drawn. "Get down!" Victor yelled, drawing his own weapon. But then, like avenging angels, 4 motorcycles roared onto the scene. Their riders dressed in black, firing suppression rounds at the SUV's tires. The lead SUV lost control, flipped, and crashed into a guardrail. "Reinforcements from Mr. Blackwood," Victor said, quickly reversing and speeding away from the scene. Within 2 minutes, "We were clear. Are you hurt, Miss Isabella?" Victor asked, his eyes meeting mine in the rearview mirror. I touched the growing lump on my forehead and smiled coldly. "I'm fine." Marcus must be truly desperate to try something this stupid in broad daylight. Back at the safe house, I immediately called Leo. "Dad, Marcus just tried to have me killed. Sent armed men after my car. I'm sending a full security detail." "No," I interrupted. "I handled it. But I need you to do something for me. Leak to the press that Marcus Hayes ordered a hit on his own wife. Make sure the police get anonymous tips with vehicle descriptions and license plates. Consider it done." "Isabella, are you sure you want to escalate this far?" "He broke my leg and left me in a basement, Dad. Then he tried to have me killed. I'm not escalating, I'm ending this." After the call, I checked the security footage from the Hayes mansion. As expected, Marcus and Natalie were having a violent confrontation. "This is all your fault," Marcus screamed, his face contorted with rage. "You said the baby was mine. Now everyone knows the truth. We're finished." Natalie's laugh was bitter and cruel. "Your father didn't seem to mind when he was sleeping with me. All you Hayes men are the same, pathetic, entitled, weak. Shut up." Marcus lunged and began choking her. Natalie grabbed a decorative letter opener from a nearby desk and slashed him across the face. Marcus screamed and released her, blood streaming down his cheek. She fled the room. I turned off the feed, a cold satisfaction settling in my chest. They were destroying each other, just as I'd planned. My phone rang. It was Adrian. "Isabella, emergency board meeting just concluded. Marcus has been officially terminated as CEO. Richard Hayes suffered a heart attack and was rushed to the hospital. And the stock hit another limit down. We now control 23% of outstanding shares." "It's not enough," I said, walking to the window. The night sky was pitch black, starless. "I need to see Hayes Developments completely destroyed before I rebuild it." "There's one more thing," Adrian hesitated. "Cypher found something. The real reason Richard was sending Natalie money." "Tell me." "The money wasn't really for her. It was blackmail payments to Robert Sterling. Richard and Christopher Sterling, Robert's late brother, were both involved in your mother's death 15 years ago. Robert has been extorting Richard ever since, and he was using Natalie as the go-between." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. "My mother—" "There's more. Cypher found the original police report, the one that was buried. Your mother didn't just witness Christopher kill someone. She was investigating the entire Hayes Sterling construction fraud scheme. She had evidence that could have sent them all to prison. That's why they killed her. I closed my eyes, tears streaming down my face. Isabella? Adrian's voice was gentle. Are you all right? I'm fine, I whispered. Thank you for finding this. Send everything to Leo. It's time to finish this. 3 days after Richard Hayes's disastrous birthday party, a seismic announcement shook the New York business world. Blackwood Industries announces hostile takeover of Hayes Developments. The press conference was held at the Four Seasons. I stood behind a podium, flanked by Leo and Adrian, facing a sea of journalists and cameras. I wore a tailored Armani suit and my mother's jewelry, the ruby necklace and black pearl bracelet, symbols of everything I'd fought for. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice steady and clear. I'm here today to announce that Blackwood Industries has acquired a controlling interest in Hayes Developments. As the new CEO, my first act will be to initiate a complete internal investigation into decades of fraud, embezzlement, and criminal activity. Hands shot up immediately. Miss Blackwood, your husband Marcus Hayes is currently wanted by police. What is your relationship with him now? We are filing for divorce. Mr. Hayes's actions, both personal and professional, are indefensible. I will cooperate fully with law enforcement. There are rumors that your mother was killed 15 years ago by members of the Hayes and Sterling families. Can you comment? I paused, letting the moment stretch. Yes. My mother, Elena Blackwood, was murdered by Christopher Sterling and Richard Hayes because she was preparing to expose their criminal enterprise. I have submitted all evidence to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Justice delayed is not justice denied. The room erupted with questions, but I raised a hand. One more thing. Hayes Developments will be restructured and renamed. 50% of profits from the East River project, after it's rebuilt to proper safety standards, will go toward a victims fund for families harmed by the company's illegal demolitions and construction fraud. This company will become a model of corporate responsibility and ethical business practices. After the press conference, I found a quiet moment alone in a conference room. My phone buzzed. A message from Cypher. Marcus Hayes arrested at Canadian border attempting to flee. Richard Hayes died in hospital, heart attack. Robert Sterling pleading guilty to multiple charges in exchange for reduced sentence. Natalie Sterling admitted to psychiatric facility. I stared at the message, waiting to feel something. Satisfaction? Relief? Joy? Instead, I felt empty. There was a gentle knock on the door. Adrian entered, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. I thought you might need this, he said softly. Thank you. I took the glass but didn't drink. Isabella, you've accomplished something remarkable. Your mother would be so proud, would she? I looked out the window at the glittering cityscape. I've spent the last 6 months consumed by revenge. I've destroyed lives, ruined families, become everything I once despised. No, Adrian said firmly. You've brought justice to those who thought they were untouchable. There's a difference, is there? I finally took a sip of champagne. Sometimes I'm not sure anymore. Adrian moved closer, his expression earnest. Isabella, I've watched you transform from a victim into one of the most powerful people in this city. But more importantly, I've watched you maintain your integrity. You could have simply had Marcus killed. You could have destroyed innocent employees along with the guilty executives. But you didn't. You chose justice over revenge. His words settled over me like a warm blanket. Thank you, Adrian. For everything. He hesitated, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a small box. Isabella, I know the timing might not be perfect, but my phone rang, interrupting the moment. It was Leo. Isabella, turn on the news. Channel 7. I grabbed the remote and turned on the TV in the corner. A breaking news banner scrolled across the bottom. Marcus Hayes confesses to attempted murder. The anchor's voice filled the room. In a stunning development, Marcus Hayes, former CEO of Hayes Developments, has confessed to ordering a hit on his wife, Isabella Blackwood. In exchange for a plea deal, Hayes is also providing evidence against his father and Robert Sterling in the 15-year-old murder of Elena Blackwood. I sank into a chair, the champagne glass nearly slipping from my hand. It's over, Leo's voice came through the phone. The DA has everything. Richard's estate will be liquidated to pay restitution. Marcus is looking at 25 to life. Robert Sterling won't see the outside of a prison cell until he's 90. And Natalie? She'll likely spend years in psychiatric care, then face fraud charges when she's deemed competent to stand trial. I closed my eyes. Thank you, Dad, for everything. No, Isabella. Thank you. You finished what I couldn't. Your mother's memory can finally rest in peace. After I hung up, Adrian was still standing there, the small box in his hand. I'm sorry, I said. You were saying? He smiled nervously and opened the box. Inside was a simple, elegant diamond ring. Isabella Blackwood, I know I'm probably the last person you want to think about romance with right now, but I've watched you fight, survive, and triumph. And somewhere along the way, I fell completely in love with you. I'm not asking you to marry me today. I'm asking if someday when you're ready, you'd consider letting me be part of your life. Not as an advisor or a business partner, but as someone who loves you for exactly who you are. For the first time in months, I felt something warm bloom in my chest. Adrian, you don't have to answer now, he said quickly. Take all the time you need. I'll wait. I stood and took the ring from the box, studying it in the light. Then I slipped it on my right hand, not my left. I'm not ready for forever yet, I said softly. But I'm ready to try, to see what life looks like when it's not consumed by revenge. Adrian's smile was brilliant. He pulled me into a gentle embrace. That's more than enough for me. 6 months later, the transformation was complete. Hayes Developments had been restructured, rebranded, and reborn as Blackwood Ethical Construction. The East River project had been torn down to the foundation and rebuilt according to proper safety codes, with ample green space, affordable housing units, and a community center named after my mother. I stood in the empty community center on opening day, looking at the bronze plaque on the wall, the Elena Blackwood Community Center, dedicated to a woman who believed in justice, compassion, and the power of doing what's right, no matter the cost. It's beautiful, Adrian said. Coming to stand beside me, she would have loved this. Over the past 6 months, Adrian and I had grown closer, not in the rushed, passionate way of my relationship with Marcus, but in something deeper, built on trust, respect, and genuine partnership. The ring had moved from my right hand to my left 3 months ago. We were planning a quiet wedding in the fall. Miss Blackwood? A young woman approached hesitantly. I'm Sarah Martinez. My family was one of the ones displaced by the original East River project. I just wanted to say thank you. My children will grow up in a real home now, with a park and a community center, because of what you did. Tears pricked my eyes. Your family deserved better from the beginning. I'm just glad I could make it right. After Sarah left, Leo appeared in the doorway. Isabella, there's someone here to see you. A thin, elderly woman walked in slowly, leaning on a cane. Her face was deeply lined, but her eyes were sharp and clear. Miss Blackwood, she said in a quavering voice, I'm Dorothy Chen. I was your mother's best friend. I've been away for many years, but I heard about what you did, and I had to come. Mrs. Chen, I said gently, guiding her to a chair. Please, sit. Your mother, Dorothy said, tears streaming down her weathered face, was the best person I ever knew. When she saw that man murdered at the construction site, she was terrified. But she couldn't let it go. She said someone had to stand up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. I know, I whispered. The night before she died, she called me. She said if anything happened to her, I should make sure you knew the truth someday, that she loved you more than anything, and that she hoped you'd grow up to be brave and kind, but not so brave it got you killed like her. Dorothy reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. She gave me this to keep safe. She said to give it to you when you were old enough to understand. With shaking hands, I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter in my mother's handwriting. My dearest Isabella, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you. I'm so sorry, my darling girl. I'm sorry I won't be there to see you grow up, to help you through heartbreak, to dance at your wedding, but I want you to know that whatever choice I made that led to my death, I would make it again. Because some things are worth dying for, justice, integrity, protecting the innocent. I hope you grow up to be strong, Isabella. But I also hope you learn something I never quite mastered. Revenge and justice are not the same thing. Revenge is about making others suffer because you suffered. Justice is about making sure no one else has to suffer what you did. Choose justice, my love. Always choose justice. And know that wherever I am so proud of the woman you will become. All my love, forever and always. Mom, I couldn't hold back the tears. Retry, continue, anymore. They poured down my face as I clutched the letter to my chest. Adrian knelt beside me, his hand on my shoulder. Leo stood nearby, his own eyes glistening. She was right, I said finally, my voice breaking. I thought I was seeking justice, but so much of it was just revenge. I wanted them to hurt the way they hurt me. But in the end, Dorothy said softly, you chose differently. You didn't just destroy, you rebuilt. You created something that helps people. That's justice, dear. That's what your mother wanted. I looked around the community center, at the classrooms where children would learn, the kitchen where families would gather, the library where dreams would be born. This was my mother's legacy. And now, it was mine too. 3 months later, I stood in a small vineyard in upstate New York, wearing a simple ivory dress. The wedding was intimate, just 30 people. Leo walked me down an aisle of autumn leaves. Adrian waited at the end, his eyes full of love and promise. Dearly beloved, the officiant began, but I barely heard the words. I was thinking about the journey that brought me here, the broken leg, the basement, the betrayal, and then the choice. The choice to not just destroy, but to rebuild, to not just seek revenge, but to create justice. Isabella, Adrian said, holding my hands. I promise to stand beside you, not in front of you or behind you, but beside you as we build a life based on honesty, respect, and love. Adrian, I replied, my voice steady, I promise to choose justice over revenge, compassion over cruelty, and love over hate. Every single day, we exchanged rings. I now pronounce you husband and wife. As we kissed, I heard applause and something else, the sound of wind through trees, like a whisper of approval. Well done, my darling girl. Well done. 1 year after the wedding, I stood in the executive office of Blackwood Ethical Construction, looking at the city sprawling beneath me. So much had changed. Marcus Hayes was serving 28 years in federal prison. He'd been denied parole twice. His guilty plea in the murder-for-hire case had sealed his fate. Richard Hayes died in prison from complications of his heart condition. His entire estate had been liquidated, every penny going to victims of his company's fraud. Robert Sterling accepted a plea deal, 20 years, with possibility of parole after 15. In exchange, he provided evidence against dozens of corrupt officials and business leaders. Natalie Sterling remained in psychiatric care. Last I heard, she was making progress, but would likely face fraud charges once released. The Sterling Industries empire had collapsed completely. Assets were seized, liquidated, distributed to creditors and victims, and Hayes Developments, now Blackwood, Ethical Construction, had become one of the most respected firms in the industry. We'd completed 17 projects in the past year. Every single one met or exceeded safety standards. Every single one included affordable housing components. Every single one gave back to the community. My phone buzzed. A message from Adrian. Doctor's appointment confirmed for tomorrow, 10 a.m. Love you. I smiled and placed my hand on my stomach, where a tiny life was beginning to grow. Our daughter. We'd already chosen her name, Elena, after my mother. There was a knock on my office door. Victor entered, no longer dressed in tactical gear, but in a simple suit. He'd become head of our corporate security division. Miss Isabella, sorry, Mrs. Chen, he corrected himself with a small smile. There's someone here to see you. Says it's important. A young woman in her mid-20s entered nervously. She had dark circles under her eyes and carried a worn folder. Mrs. Chen, my name is Maya Rodriguez. I'm a journalist with the New York Times. I'm writing a story about corporate accountability and ethical business practices and, well, everyone says I need to talk to you. Please, sit. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. What can I do for you? Maya hesitated, then opened her folder. I've been investigating Preston Industries. They're doing exactly what Hayes Developments did 15 years ago, illegal. Demolitions, bribing inspectors, cutting corners on safety. People are getting hurt, families are being displaced, and nobody seems to care because Preston is too powerful, too connected. My stomach tightened. And you're asking me? I'm asking if you know how to stop them. Everyone I've talked to says, you're the only person who successfully brought down a corrupt construction empire. I need to know, how did you do it? I was quiet for a long moment, studying this young woman who reminded me so much of my mother, and of myself. Maya, I said finally, I can tell you how I did it, but more importantly, I can tell you what I learned, what I wish I'd known from the beginning. I stood and walked to the window. When my husband broke my leg and left me in that basement, all I wanted was revenge. I wanted him to suffer. I wanted everyone who hurt me to pay. Maya listened intently, her pen poised over her notebook. And I got my revenge, I continued. I destroyed Marcus, his family, the Sterlings, everyone. But you know what? It didn't make me feel better. It didn't heal my broken leg or my broken heart. Revenge is empty, Maya. It's a hollow victory. Then why do people call you a hero? Maya asked quietly. Because eventually, I learned the difference between revenge and justice. Revenge is about making them suffer. Justice is about making sure no one else suffers the same way. I returned to my desk and pulled out a file, everything we'd compiled on Preston Industries over the past 3 months. I've been watching Preston, I said, sliding the file across to Maya. We've documented safety violations, bribery, illegal demolitions. Everything you need is in here, but Maya... I locked eyes with her. Don't do what I did. Don't let this consume you. Don't let it turn you into something you're not. Expose them, yes. Bring them to justice, absolutely. But don't lose yourself in the process. Maya's eyes widened as she flipped through the file. This is everything. This is enough to bring them down. Why are you giving this to me? Because that's what my mother would have done. She believed in justice through proper channels, courts, law, journalism. I chose a darker path, and while it worked, it cost me. Pieces of myself I'll never get back. I placed my hand on my stomach again. I don't want my daughter growing up thinking that revenge is the answer. I want her to know that there's a better way. Maya stood, clutching the file like it was made of gold. Mrs. Chen, I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me. Just promise me something. When you write your story, don't make me a hero. Make the victims the heroes. Make the people who stood up and fought back the heroes. I'm just someone who got lucky. Lucky I had resources. Lucky I had people who loved me. Lucky I survived. After Maya left, Adrian appeared in the doorway. I heard, he said softly. You gave her everything on Preston. It was the right thing to do. I know. He crossed the room and wrapped his arms around me from behind, his hands resting on my stomach. You're going to be an amazing mother, Isabella. I hope so, I whispered. I hope I can teach her to be strong but kind, to fight for justice without losing herself to hatred. You will, Adrian said with absolute certainty, because you've already learned that lesson yourself. 6 months later, Maya Rodriguez's expose on Preston Industries ran as a 5-part series in the New York Times. It was devastating, thorough, and absolutely damning. Within 2 weeks, federal investigators raided Preston's offices. The CEO was arrested. The company filed for bankruptcy, and not a single innocent employee lost their job because Blackwood Ethical Construction acquired the company's ethical contracts and hired every worker who wanted to stay. Maya won the Pulitzer Prize for investigative journalism. In her acceptance speech, she said, I want to thank someone who taught me that justice isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about building a better world. Someone who showed me that the greatest victory isn't making them suffer, but making sure their victims heal. I watched the speech from my hospital room, where I'd given birth to Elena just 3 hours earlier. She was perfect, tiny, pink, with a full head of dark hair. Adrian sat beside me, his arm around my shoulders, tears streaming down his face. "She's beautiful," he whispered. Leo stood at the foot of the bed, his expression softer than I'd ever seen it. "Elena," he said quietly, "your grandmother would have loved you so much." I looked down at my daughter, this tiny miracle, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. "Peace. Isabella," Adrian said softly, "you've built something amazing. Not just the company, but this." He gestured around us. "This life, this family, this legacy." "We built it together," I corrected. "Maybe," he smiled. "But you had the courage to start. Even when you were broken and alone in that basement, you didn't give up. You called for help. You fought back. And you won." I thought about that night, the worst night of my life. The pain, the darkness, the moment I reached for my phone and called Leo. That was the moment everything changed. Not when I exposed Marcus at the gala, not when I took over the company, not when I brought down the Hayes and Sterling families. The moment everything changed was when I chose to survive, when I chose to fight, when I chose to believe I deserved better. "You know what I realized?" I said, looking at Adrian and Leo. "Marcus breaking my leg was the best thing that ever happened to me." They both looked shocked. "Not because of the pain," I explained quickly, "but because it shattered every illusion I had. I thought love meant sacrifice. I thought being a good wife meant being small, quiet, accommodating. I thought my worth came from making him happy." I kissed Elena's tiny forehead. When he broke my leg, he broke that false version of me. And what emerged from the rubble was someone stronger, someone who knew her worth, someone who refused to accept less than she deserved. To the woman who emerged from the rubble, Leo raised an imaginary glass. "To justice over revenge," Adrian added. "To second chances," I finished, "and to teaching our daughter that she never, ever has to settle for less than she deserves." The Elena Blackwood Community Center was hosting its annual summer festival. Children ran through the park, their laughter echoing off the newly planted trees. Families gathered for picnics. A jazz band played on the outdoor stage. I stood at the edge of the park, watching my daughter, now 5 years old, chase butterflies with a group of other children. She had my dark hair and Adrian's gentle eyes. She was kind, curious, fearless, everything I hoped she would be. "Mama!" Elena ran over, clutching a flower. "Look what I found." "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Like you," she said simply, then ran back to her friends. Adrian came up beside me, carrying our son, 2-year-old James, named after my father. "She's just like you," he said with a smile. "God, I hope not," I laughed. "I hope she never has to fight the way I did." "She won't," Adrian said confidently, "because you're building a world where girls like Elena don't have to fight for their worth. They already know it." I looked around at the community center, at the park, at the families gathering in a space that had once been a symbol of greed and corruption. Now it was a symbol of redemption, of justice, of second chances. My phone buzzed. A message from Maya Rodriguez. "Preston Industries trial concluded. CEO sentenced to 18 years. All victims receiving restitution. None of this would have been possible without you. Thank you for teaching me the difference between revenge and justice." I smiled and typed back. "Thank you for carrying on the fight. My mother would be proud. I know I am." As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the park, I felt Adrian's hand slip into mine. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. I thought about that question. Did I regret marrying Marcus? No, because it led me here. Did I regret the path I took to destroy him? Sometimes. I wished I'd found justice sooner, with less darkness along the way. But did I regret surviving? Fighting back? Refusing to be a victim? Never. "No regrets," I said finally. "Just lessons learned." "And what's the biggest lesson?" I watched Elena twirl in the fading sunlight, her flower clutched in her hand, her laughter pure and free. That breaking isn't the end, I said. Sometimes breaking is just the beginning. It's the moment when you stop being who others wanted you to be and start becoming who you were always meant to be. Adrian kissed my temple. I love the woman you became. I love her too, I admitted. It took me a long time, but I finally love her too. As we walked back toward the community center, toward the bronze plaque bearing my mother's name, I felt her presence, like a warm hand on my shoulder. Well done, my darling girl. You chose justice, you chose compassion, you chose love, and in doing so, you became exactly who I always hoped you'd be. Not because of what was done to you, but because of what you chose to do with what was done to you. I am so proud. I am so proud.